Dan, how you doing?
I'm great, Michael. Flying solo today, huh?
Flying solo. I do have a little stuffed monkey here that's replacing Don, but so far he's done a great job.
He's filling in like nothing ever happened.
Like nothing happened at all. All right, so what happened at camp today? Anything of note?
Well, they get the cart that takes guys off the field got a workout today. Brandon Mosley, the guard who's filling in for Chris Snee, Xavier Grimble, a rookie tight end out of USC, and Jameel McClain, the linebacker who's filling in for John Beeson, middle linebacker. All those guys got carted off the field. So I think that's a pretty bad pace, 3 per day. They're going to have to bring that down. But of the 3, it sounds like McClain's the only one they're really worried about in terms of an injury. He has a little bit of a foot issue they're checking out. The other 2 guys, I think, were just heat-related, dehydration, that kind of stuff.
Now, it's interesting. This is the first time you really get a chance to see Eli work McAdoo's system. Did it seem any different than Gilbride's system to you?
Yeah, it's real up-tempo, a lot of close to the line of scrimmage stuff. They're not going to, probably take as many shots downfield as Gilbride did, or at least they're not going to build it around those concepts. Odell Beckham, the rookie wide receiver, the first-round pick, is a big part of their ability to do that, and he's taking it easy because of a hamstring injury he suffered in the spring. So he pulled up short on one route, and it ended up being a Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie interception. So their ability to stretch the field is going to depend on how quickly he comes, especially with Mario Manningham still out nursing a knee issue. So, I think what you're seeing is that short stuff, that quick stuff, that throw to the backs, throw to the tight ends, throw to Victor Cruz. Get your playmakers the ball in space and let them operate. And I think what it comes down to for Eli is that short-range accuracy and that quick decision-making.
All right, now Eli obviously did not run yesterday when they reported he's coming off ankle surgery. How did he look? How was his mobility?
It's really it's like nothing ever happened. We asked Eli about the ankle yesterday, and he kind of seemed surprised by the question, like he hadn't thought about it in a while. So, he looked fine in the minicamp last month, and you would not know to watch him out here that he's a guy who had his ankle operated on this offseason. I think that they dodged a bullet there, and he healed it up real quick.
All right, now one of the big questions with the Giants offensively, Dan, has to be the tight end situation. They really don't have a legitimate tight end with any kind of a resume to him. Where is that going with that position?
We talked to Adrian Robinson a bit today, the 2012 fourth-round pick, and he's excited for the opportunity. He thinks he's got a chance to be the starter, and they're going to give him every opportunity to be the starter. The thing about Robinson, you say this is a guy who hasn't played. I mean, this is a guy who hasn't played. He didn't play much in college. The Giants drafted him as a project. They liked his workout at the combine. They liked his physical ability and his size and strength and speed, and they figured they could build him into something worthwhile at tight end. So they haven't been able to get or keep him on the field his first 2 years in the league, and so projecting him as the starter is really, really high risk. But that's where they are. They feel like he's got the most raw talent and the most upside of any of the tight ends on their roster right now. So they're going to give him a shot and give him a lot of reps and see if he can do it. If not, they go to someone like Larry Donnell, Daniel Fells, Kellen Davis. It's not a real inspiring group there. Jerry Reese would tell you that they don't tend to get a lot of production out of their tight end, 40, 45 catches a year, and they feel like they can always find somebody to do that. But it's hard to believe they've ever been quite this thin at this point in the offseason.
And also a little bit of a different take for the tight ends. They've always had Mike Pope there, who they felt could turn anybody into a decent tight end. Now he's with the Cowboys, and Kevin Gilbride's son is the tight end coach. So the whole thing is new. And with all the money they spent in free agency, I'm surprised they didn't go a little extra mile and bring in a legitimate tight end.
Yeah, but, I mean, they prioritized positions, and they spent on cornerback, and they needed to re-sign Beeson, they thought, at middle linebacker, and they needed to upgrade the offensive line. So they just didn't really have enough to do that, and that's a position where they don't tend to commit big-time resources. And, you mentioned Pope, obviously a legend here. I believe he's the only guy whose name is on all 4 Super Bowl trophies here with the Giants, and it was a surprise that they let him go. But Robinson himself made a comment earlier in the offseason about, he loved Pope and he learned a lot from him, but it's been interesting to have Gilbride, someone who's a little closer to his age and the player's age, because it's a little different perspective, just a little different means of communication. So it might be a case where maybe a different voice, fresh voice, might be a benefit to somebody who's hearing something either for the first time or in a different way than he's heard it before.
Talking with Dan Graziano, ESPN.com's Giants reporter. How's the defensive line look? Because there's a lot of new faces there, and so much depends, to me at least, on how JPP plays.
And he looks good. He's quick. He's lively. He's got a chip on his shoulder. I agree with you. The defensive line and the pass rush will depend on him. He's the one that has the ability to be sort of transcendent as a great player as opposed to just a good one. And if he is that, if he's what he was in 2011, then, yeah, they can patch it together on the other side with Kiwanuka and Robert Ayers and Demontre Moore, whatever comes of that. And they feel like they're okay in the middle. They got those big bodies they like, the kid from Ohio State that they drafted last year, Jonathan Hankins, and Cullen Jenkins, and a couple guys. But, yeah, I think that when we get to the end of this season and we evaluate the defensive line play and the pass rush of the Giants, it will have risen or fallen on the performance of Jason Pierre-Paul.
It's also interesting that there's going to be a void in leadership. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot and say who takes up that void, but are they concerned? You lose Snee, who was a leader in that room, and you lose Tuck, who was a leader in that room. Are the Giants concerned about this?
And Terrell Thomas and Kevin Booth on the offensive line. I mean, guys that you didn't get a lot of pub in terms of leaders, but there is a lot of that gone. And Tom Coughlin's been talking about that all offseason. And, he expects people will step up. Antrell Roll is the guy who's been a leader the last couple of years. Beeson is a guy on defense that really took over that role. But, where does it come from on offense? Eli Manning is definitely a leader. I mean, he runs meetings. He works with his receivers. He tries to make people better. But, they have lost a lot, and they haven't replaced it. So, Snee told a story yesterday about when Sean O'Hara left. He went to Coughlin and said, look, I'm not a rah-rah guy, but I can do this, and this to help out with the leadership void. And maybe there are, those kinds of things going on. I mean, Will Beatty said today, I want to be in 6 years what it turns out, Chris Snee was. I want to be the guy that elevated his off-field game to that extent. So, it's a lot of talk. And it sounds nice. It's good that they all know that they need to do it and that they want to, but that stuff's real organic. I mean, you've been around clubhouses and locker rooms a long time. You know that. I mean, that's not manufactured, and it's stuff that has to happen naturally, and people have to buy into it. So to try and project where it's going to come from, is almost foolish.
Dan Graziano is our guest, ESPN.com's Giants reporter. Before I let you go, Dan, last year they finished 7-9. They start off 0-6, so they win 7 of their final 10. And I don't think they had a great team, and with the injuries, that even made it worse. So what's your gut say early? We don't even know how this team's going to shape out, but the nucleus and what they expected to be. How good do you think this team could be?
I mean, it looks from here to me like a middle-of-the-road team. But, could Eli have a great year and elevate it? Could JPP have a great year and elevate it? I'm a believer that Tom Coughlin is a coach that gets whose teams will always be at least as good as they should be. I think he keeps the floor high. And I think that, they have people in those kinds of key positions that can make them better than they look on paper. Because you look on paper, I was just sitting there with Antonio Pierce doing a hit on NFL Insiders, and looking at the roster, I mean, it still looks like a roster that needs a lot of work. So they're really counting on those big-time guys who have played like big-time championship-level guys to do that for them this year. And if they don't, it could be another long year here.
Dan, great stuff. We'll check in with you a lot, and we thank you for coming on with us.
All right, Michael and the monkey filling in for Don. It was a pleasure.